Welcome everybody to the Humanode Fireside. We just do this once every 2 weeks or so to, chat a little bit about various features and points concerning the Humanode to enlighten ourselves and share the knowledge. And hopefully, after the first 30 minutes of going back and forth here, we'll be opening the floor up to questions where people are free to ask anything, especially about the topic we're going to be talking about today. And as you all might have seen, today's topic is biometric identification. And just as a very, very brief intro, this is one of the key features of a Humanode, as it is the basis of our whole consensus mechanism. And this is one of the key features that will make Humanode tick. So, Daro, you want to give a very brief introduction into what we're talking about when we say biometric authentication and consensus?
Well, I'm going to talk about biometric authentication, but consensus is a topic for another time, right?
Okay.
So, by saying biometric authentication in Humanode, we're actually referring to two separate parts. One where we're talking about biometric authentication and validation for validators, or humanodes as we call them here. And on the other hand, we have ordinary biometric authentication and identification for users of wallets. So when we're talking about biometrics in a Humanode, these are completely different two approaches. And today I would like to talk about them so that everyone here understands difference. As you might very well know, Humanode is a network which is based on biometric existence or biological uniqueness of real human beings. And nodes in the system are deployed through biometric processing to prove that you are a real human being and that you're unique. And so that one human being is not able to deploy more than one node. Now, the way we biometrically authenticate validators that are like pillars of the network is one thing. And, instrumental comfort for ordinary users through attaching their private keys to their biometrics is a completely different thing. While we're talking about biometric authentication for validators or human nodes, biometrics here are a part of symbol resistance, right? Chen, you know what symbol resistance is.
Oh,
very
yes.
good.
Yes.
Basically, it's a defense against spawning multiple identities from the same person, or like spawning clones to gain more power in voting or validations on top of in the network. So here, in terms of validators, biometric authentication is used to deter people from spawning identities. And as you can guess, it's quite a state-of-the-art technology that consists of two main parts. First one is search and matching, which is private. It's like understanding and finding you in the database without breaking your privacy. It's like the first part. And the second part is liveness detection mechanism, built inside the biometric authentication scheme. This mechanism is to determine whether you're a live human being or a deep fake, a doll, a mask, or anything else. It's actually called an artifact. So if someone tries to forge a fake mask or a doll, it's called an artifact, and liveness detection mechanism is there to prevent malicious actors from trying to spawn people from thin air, basically. So yeah, two parts, like search and matching operations and liveness detection mechanism. Both of those parts take a really hard time of, there are many ways of doing them, and there are many schemes of how to conduct those operations. And our system is very reliant on how can we deter people from spawning fake identities, because basically our civil resistance is very reliant on it. So as this is a very important part for the human nodes and the validation, the liveness detection mechanisms and the way the biometrics are processed for validators is a very bad user experience, I would say, because would make people do a lot of things to determine whether they're real or not. But they would have to prove it that they exist only, like at the beginning, only once in a month, and not just scanning your photograph or your face. We would ask people to move around their head, to say multiple words, to shake their head, and sometimes that experience is not as nice as Apple ID that people are used to and stuff like this. But we understand that it's much more important to actually defend the system from the attack of clones than having some bad user experience for validators. And on the other hand, we have a biometric identification scheme for users who are just going to use the wallets and stuff like this. And the difference here is that we are not going to deter people from creating multiple wallets. People will be able to create as much wallets as they want, because here biometrics are not going hand in hand with liveness detection, because it's not required. You're just utilizing your biometrics to attach a private key and use it to sign transactions in your wallet for easiness of use. But we definitely would recommend saving your private key somewhere else as well. So yeah, Shan, basically one biometrics for users and the others for validators. That's it.
Okay. Well, here's a question. I mean, we've talked about, liveness detection, for validators, and that it might be a not so user-friendly experience. But are we just talking about using one modality, as in we're going to be using face authentication only, or are we also looking at other modalities? Will there be a combination of multiple modalities, or are we just talking face authentication?
Well, in the beginning, we're talking face only.
Okay.
The reason for that is it's because face modality is like very developed, has so many frameworks, a lot of approach.
I think data fell off here.
State-of-the-art
Oh, okay, you're back.
Work with your face. Was I gone?
Yes.
For how long?
5 seconds, 10 seconds.
Oops. Okay. Well, I would say I'll repeat then. The face. Well, in the beginning, we're going to use the face modality because it's the most developed one. It has like a lot of frameworks, a lot of people working on them. and our mobile devices are, yeah, structured the way so that we interact with our faces, frontal camera and stuff like this. And yeah, there are a lot of great modalities out there, like iris, for example, and DNA neurosignatures. But it's a thing that we're going to constrain in the future. And face is a very good, unique modality to utilize for this purpose.
Okay, so let me just. This might be slightly off topic here, but
Mhm.
might as well ask it. When you talk about biometric identification, um, some people will be like, "Oh yeah, that'll be easier. Don't have to remember all the passwords, and it's all great and all." But then, of course, there's this, you know, uh, this fear towards biometric identification, especially, in this case, we're talking about using our biometric ID as our stake. So people tend to freeze up. And of course, there's always, um, you read scary stories about people owning your biometric IDs, thus owning you. Um, what can you say to alleviate this fear towards biometric identification?
Hmm. Could you repeat the last part, please?
Okay, so for example, let's say uh, if a hmm, let's say some entity owns your biometric ID, or basically uh, has control
Hmm.
of it, or there's fear towards other people having full access to your biometric identification.
Yeah.
Just as a simple explanation, for example, um, the government of Iran uh, uses biometric identification to
Everyone does.
basically to categorize everything. They put all this information there, and they basically control your entire life. So, how is Humanode different in that sense? What?
Oh,
Yeah.
to answer the question properly, I first got to talk about what opinions are there in this field. You know, well, on the one hand, we got people saying, "Oh my God, we got this honeypot problem." Do you know about Shen, right?
Oh yes, with all the information in one place, you come in, search
Yeah,
it, and you get
basically, like,
get the honeypot.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we got all this biometric data in one place, and if someone penetrates that, oh my God, it's going to go out, and we'll have like people using it and stuff like this. And on the other hand, we have people that are following the principles. How's the principles stated by Dorothy Denning is basically she was a member of National Cybersecurity uh, Hall of Fame in the U.S. And they also call her the godmother of liveness detection.
Yeah,
And
I
what,
believe she
what
was the one that said a good biometric system should not depend on secrecy.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. And like there's a lot of followers of that thing that biometric prints they need not to be kept secret, but the validation process must check for liveness of the readings and stuff like this.
Hmm.
And actually, both of those opinions have some sense in them,
Hmm.
because like if you're thinking about that, your biometrics are well, that your biometrics were not taken already by somebody, well then you've been probably living under the rock or something like this. Because I mean, like if you upload any of your photographs or something like this, there's just so much data created by ordinary people that are willing to just post it online somewhere. And I mean, if you just walk down the street and the camera saw your face and it's written down somewhere, your biometrics are basically everywhere. And it's like, yeah, even having honeypots in this matter wouldn't change anything for you because it's not through used biometrics that you actually pass the liveness detection and access somebody's wallet. But that's not the thing. So, while understanding both sides of this problem, we here at Humanode still address the question of privacy, of course, and at the same time, the question of centralizations of biometrics of data. So there are two things about this. The scheme that we're implementing is going to make the biometric data private, and at the same time, it won't have a single point of failure that can be hacked on, biometrics taken away. The biometrics are going to be biometric data is going to be kept in a decentralized way and going to be spread among the human nodes. Yeah. So it's private and decentralized.
So if I understand it correctly, basically the actual biometric data is, other than the search and maps to basically prove that the user is the user, it's kept hidden from us, and it's also kept hidden from the user. Am I correct?
From anybody, even the system doesn't fully understand what's going on.
So for the regular Joe user, the non-validator, what kind of process are we looking at? I mean, we're not looking at liveness detection. So what type of system are we talking about here?
You mean the search and matching operations, right?
Yeah, yes, just for the regular user, creating a wallet.
Basically, as you remember, we talked about co-ownership in our first talk, right? And it's like a system itself is a convolutional neural network that works on encrypted data and encrypts data itself. This network is the liveness detection protocol, right? And it determines whether you're a human being or not and encrypts your data at the same time. And because it's a co-ownership, it belongs to every single human node equally, and it's auditable at any time. So that's the system we're talking about here.
Okay, so actually, let me re-ask that question. Okay, for a validator, of course, you have a very strict system, and with liveness detection. But for a regular wallet user, non-validator, what is, is there any major difference? Is it easy sign-up process, or is it a shorter thing, or you just skip the liveness detection, or how's it done?
It's a very precise and almost impenetrable search and matching itself, right? Because it's a neural network we're utilizing, and the false acceptance rates is like 1 in 27.5 million. And I mean, you can utilize this as a tool, but you can create multiple clones of yourself. And basically that's the difference. There's like search and matching operations that still make it almost unbreakable, and probabilities, they go down with each year because those networks, they become better and better, and our network will become better and better with every single day. But yeah, there's no liveness detection because the user experience would be so bad. Like anyone will get frustrated by moving around their head, jumping, saying stuff just to do anything, like sign something on chain. And yeah, that's like we figured that it's like two separate things, and we're gonna have a very strict biometric authentication for humanoids, but a light one for users. But the thing is that the users don't really have to biometrically authenticate anything. If they want to have a wallet, they can just easily take the private key and not encrypt it with their biometrics and just write it down somewhere and utilize it as an ordinary blockchain wallet.
So, I guess the next question is a fairly, well, I wouldn't say simple one. I know that almost every day our cryptography team and biometric engineers and everybody's meeting, and working on this. But what are our major challenges at this stage? I mean, we're talking about getting the testnet going live in possibly September. With September only being a couple months away, what would you say are biggest challenges right now?
It's really hard to say because everything is hard, Sean. Up until now, it was very hard to. It was very interesting. I would say it was very interesting to understand what type of consensus would have the biometric data, because it's very large data. But at the same time, we didn't want to create a network that wouldn't be able to process smart contracts in a very slow manner. So that's why Snowball plus substrate is something that we're aiming at and building right now. But I would say that private search and matching operations combined with liveness detection and their bandwidth is something that was really hard to tackle. But the giant is almost slain. So.
Okay. So before we go any further, I just want to give this opportunity to all our friends here to ask some questions. If they have anything, just raise your hand and shoot. Okay, we have Aesop. And
Aesop, please, would you ask a question?
As the system progresses and gets better over time, if you don't upgrade to the new protocols, do you lose your Humanode? Let's say you're already been a human and because I believe when I was looking at your guys' paper, it said by 4 years, if you proved your devotion to the system, you build a rank, kind of, and you within the system to do voting and earn that credibility. So let's say you've devoted your life to the system, and like for instance, like a biometric, and what it seems like you guys want to do in the future is essentially put implants almost in your head, which is I'm fine with. But that is there going to be like multiple options to prove the consensus of your credibility in the future? Or if there is an update, like an Apple update, I'm forced to update, and if I don't, I lose everything.
Well, we're always looking at multiple modalities, of course. Someone doesn't want to put a chip inside their head, that's fine. But I mean, if you have seen the table in the paper, although it's kind of outdated, we're always talking about if you're not willing to provide an internal modality, then you would have to create a combination of several modalities that are all out there, like a combination of your iris, your face, your finger, and stuff like this. But at some point, yes, we're thinking about canceling down the type modalities that we're going to utilize, and if they're insecure, I mean, if it's easy to create clones through them, then yeah, we'd have to say that you're not going to be able to use them. But what you could do is choose any of the modalities that are going to be in the future and attach them to the same biometric identity that is out there.
Yeah, and I would say that you see, there is a progressive decentralization where in 4 years, anybody who joined the DAO from the beginning would have the same rights as the founders of Humanode. So it really won't be a question to us once we introduce internal biometric modalities, which are really hard for some people to integrate into their heads, but it would be the decision of the DAO. So I would say that, of course, we can provide the vision and say that we hope that multiple biometric modalities will be enough, but it will be always not our decision only.
All right, and another thing, no one plans to get hacked. I think no one plans for anything like that, and it might not ever happen. But if it does, what's the worst that could happen? Like, what's the doomsday? Like, what data do they get? Like, if someone does break the system, like, do they get anything? Like, I know it's decentralized, and I know you never think of someone breaking the castle wall. No one thought of Genghis Khan coming there and taking over China's wall. China didn't even think it. But if it does happen, are there measures set in place internally if it is broken to reverse everything and fix it all as a failsafe?
First, you gotta understand what you like. What does he access? What kind of data are you talking about, man?
Well, everything, just everything. Like, let's say someone figures out how to access everything. Like, is there a way to shut everything down for a day, or like how? Like, it seems like no one has control. But like, if not saying the integrity is broken, but let's say there are like 10,000 fake identities on the network, and the update does go online. Does it kill those 10,000 identities immediately when that new update goes on?
It really depends on whether those identities will be able to prove they are real identities after the update. You see, there's like an update of liveness detection basically every week or two. Like, it becomes stronger and stronger. And I mean, there's the thing about biometrics is that it's not unattachable. If someone used biometrics to break in or create fake identities, then the system recognizes the biometric identities that there are. And well, if the system catches somebody trying to penetrate it or spawn anything like this, it would remember the identity, and it would also like stop people not only from signing something on this chain, but it automatically would save the data of that person and send it to like a special thing that is connected with governmental facilities and bank entities and companies around the world. And such a person won't be able to sign anything in this life anyway. So it really is about the stake. But as you might very well know, like in all other blockchains that are out there, it's if there's like a percentage of identities that control the system, they can change basically anything. They can spawn money or take it away from anybody till it's anything they want. So it's an absolute doomsday, I would say.
Yeah, and as we have seen, the way from it is for non-malicious actors to start the network again without those malicious.
And one other thing to add is that, especially when I mean, there are different elements here, but if we're strictly talking about the biometrics and liveness detection, of course everybody knows that there is a potential doomsday scenario. Thus, there are actually bounty programs out there where companies actively ask for people to try to hack them to get through, and they'll give out proper bounties of like $100,000 if you're able to hack into the system or crack the system or find the major cracks. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I will say is that like any system, and right now we're at the stage of finding the most secure way of building this castle. And everybody involved in the development already knows that once we build the first layer of the castle, once we're ready for testnet, everybody is going to be trying to take it down, including the developers. We're trying to find all the potential holes in the system. And even internally, I think people are going to be competing to try to take it down. So actually, as far as testnet goes, you should see a lot of activity and a lot of attempts into try to penetrate. And civil resistance is one thing. Actual measures to safeguard the system is actually something that we're not hoping will not happen. We're actually we suspect this is Murphy's law here. We know that there always is a possibility that the system can be hacked by some genius that we don't know, and thus I'd say probably about 60 to 70% of the effort once the system goes live is going to be put into defending the system.
And regarding your first question, not about the doomsday when the network is captured by like cyber identities, but when the data is stolen. You should understand that in our first version, we rely on the encrypted enclaves. Basically, we rely on hardware and on the mutual attestation of the hardware that we have. And most of the servers that will be launched on that hardware, those who launched them will throw away the keys from the servers. So this is how our really, really first version will work, and our second version, which our bio authentication team is working on right now, will provide cryptographic mathematical guarantees to the encryption and inability to take hands on the initial biometric data of the person.
And if I recall, again, the native token or the main token that will run on the economics of this system will be the faith token. And then there will be a governance token that will differentiate, but mostly everybody in the system will be using the faith token, and it'll run on a kind of like a system like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ampleforth. It seems like you guys were eyeing it. Am I correct?
So we have only one token. I know it's a little bit confusing because FATH is the name for the monetary algorithm, not the token itself. I mean, it's monetary algorithm that can be used in any other token as well, but our Humanode token will be the first one to utilize it. It has kind of rebalancing mechanism of ample force, but the rebase itself happens only once a year, and it happens to account for the new value created in the system. Governance token is something that we are completely against, because that's why current systems and decentralized organizations are plutocracies. When you have governance token, you can buy it up and rule the system, eventually having the system in the hands of 2 to 5 decision makers. While in Humanode, the governance is not tied to token at all. The token is just the monetary unit of the system to pay for the fees and other services. So it will be one and only Humanode token. It is not entangled with the governance, and it has a monetary algorithm that we call FAT, which is a rebase algorithm, but not crazy rebase algorithm that you see in the markets right now. It just rebases the amount of tokens in the wallet once a year to account for the new value created in the system.
So let's say, for instance, the first year gets you about, I'm going to go out on a limb, you guys get about 10,000 to 20,000 identities on the first year. The next year, let's say someone earns Humanode tokens. How does that work the next year? Let's say I have one token, and let's say the value, I'm assuming what I think is added by users, which give it more value, and more of the economy booms. So 20,000 users first year, 40,000 users the next year. I have one token. How does that rebase? Does it decrease? Does it increase? Just a little bit of curiosity. If it's not like
you can actually well, the emission is dependent really on the what we call gross Humanode product. It's the amount of services and goods sold through the network. And really, it don't depend on the number of users itself. So it's dependent on their activity. At the beginning, we're going to utilize transactional FOT, we call it like this. It's because we calculate like the amount of fees accumulated in 2 different periods. And for example, in the second period, the fees are bigger than in the first by 3%. Then we do a 3% rebalance proportionally to each wallet in the system. Sorry, Aesop, we're talking about biometric authentication today. There's like a whole bunch of videos in our separate Fireside about FAT, and I suggest that you go and check it out, and it'll be really helpful.
all right, thank you. I think I've gotten everything.
Cool.
So does anybody else have any questions? If not, okay. Let me see.
I have a question for you, Shannon.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So imagine that we're like 4 years are gone by. What biometric modality are you going to utilize for proving your Humanode existence?
Well, you know me. I don't like slow systems, and I'm lazy. So obviously, if there are biometric modalities such as chips, those are always. I don't know if 4 years is enough for chip, but basically, I think what I would go for are things that I might even go for a combination of modalities. But when you talk about you probably would need something that is deterministic. But I don't know. What about you, Dado?
Neurosignatures, if they're around, because I'm all in for invasive stuff. And you, what about you, Victor? Are you going to utilize what?
Well, is that you asking me? A person who said, "Oh no, I won't invade anything in my head" 5 years ago, when we were talking about that. Well, right now we can see that the invasive neurotech. There was a report that we released, and there was a paper and an actual experiment. You don't put in copper in your head. Well, you still do it in production, but there is research that you don't need to put copper into your head eventually, and we will have tissues that are pretty much the same as our brain. Well, I would certainly go for that, at least to strengthen the security of Humanode network, and of course the other perks like connecting to AI directly.
And do you think like this internal neurotechnology would be acceptable by most of the humanoids out there?
Well, not really, because I hope that we will have a very inclusive community, while this kind of technology will be available only in few countries and for huge amounts of money. And I don't want Humanode network to be an elite network.
Yeah, I'd probably say about 10 to 20% of the users would jump ahead. I mean, like any new technology, it will take a couple years for things to settle down and make it reliable enough. You'll have 10 to 20% of the people that will jump forward and try this new technology because it's cool and it's super easy. But then you'll have people like me that are interested in it, but somewhere pretty sure that there's going to be a major crash in the system. I want the bugs to be worked out before I jump in and try. But yeah, and one thing that Victor said here is that, I mean, we do want this to be, or at least I want this to be as inclusive as possible. I mean, I see this as a foundation of a financial platform that eventually can be used in every country in the world with validators, not only from some rich countries, but from the validators from every country in the world. And there will be, some countries will get some of this technology earlier, and other countries it would take more time. But everybody involved is human, and they all have biometrics, and they should be able to prove that they are themselves. And we will probably, or I assume the community, the DAO, will be striving to find the most secure and advanced means while also making it as affordable and accessible as possible. But trying to determine where the line of security is, basically saying, okay, you have, it has to be at least this secure, but with that level of security guaranteed, you have option A, B, C, D, E, and F.
As we're always talking about, the ultimate capabilities of Humanode to be integrated into any existing platform out there. Victor Chen, where do you think which industries do you think are really in need of pseudonymous, decentralized identities with proof liveness?
Well, I mean, that's actually a fairly easy question, and the answer is, most any system that involves governance or money, or and even platforms like Google or Facebook, it's I'd see as a potential market, but just kind of sidetracking here, looking at the various voter frauds or claims of voter frauds or whatever in the world. If you can have liveness detection and prove that you are you, and it means that you are eligible to vote, that seems like it would be a platform that this is required for. What about you, Victor?
Well, anything related to crypto needs it most, because the purpose of crypto is to have decentralized application and financial systems which you can use, but nobody can know who you are, and this belongs to any service connected to jobs, grants, decentralized organizations, wallets, and well, gaming industry, I think, as well, because bots are a real problem there.
What, you don't want me to buy more tokens from my Chinese gold farm? Data, what about you?
Well, one of the most recent that really came out after talking to several of marketplaces, basically. Because, I mean, it's like a lot of things are dependent to understand who's a fraud or not. And if you want a permissionless marketplace where you don't need like hundreds and thousands of controllers who are trying to understand who's a fraud or not, it's basically you have some shop right online that registers on its own, and there's like some kind of rating systems on marketplaces, right? And if someone is a fraud and he tries to lie to his customers, then he gets banned, but nothing stops him from creating a new account and selling stuff again. Now, if they have Humanode with liveness detection integrated, that won't be happening, because it would lock out this vendor on a biological level, and that would be it. He won't be able to spawn a new account.
So that's true. I just remembered that my sister's job is basically she works at Amazon, and every day for the past year and a half, she's been dealing with trying to get rid of the fraudulent vendors and whatnot. And she, I think it was a couple weeks ago, she was basically demanding me to find a way to develop a system so she doesn't have to do that job.
Nice, Shannon. Have you told her you're already developing that?
Yep.
So we've got a new client here.
Okay, so now we're down to about 10 minutes left here. Let's open up the floor again to some questions. If anybody has any questions here, please raise your hand. It can be questions, comments. We won't necessarily limit it to biometric authentication at this stage. So if you have any questions, now's your chance. Oh, everybody's so shy.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, then Victor, do you have any questions for Dado?
Well, I'm asking these questions every day.
And what are those questions?
Yeah, what is that question you're referring to?
I mean, all of those are different. Sorry, can't come up with anything right now.
Well, I have a question for everyone here. So, it's less of a question, more of an asking stuff. Like, guys, so we're really researching into deterministic biometric modalities. I would care to explain, like, there's like a probabilistic modalities and deterministic. Something that uses computer vision. The modalities that we use at the moment are based on probabilistics because there's like a neural network involved, and there's always probabilistics when you're using neural network and computer vision because every face is different. Every time you scan a face, it's different all the time. So, but although false acceptance rates are very low, they still exist. And what we're searching for is deterministic biometric modalities, ones that are not dependent on probabilities. For example, a DNA spiral is one of those modalities that can 100% determine directly whether it's you or not. But the thing about DNA is that it's everywhere. Like anywhere you go, anywhere you see it, like any cup you drink from, it's basically there. So it's really insecure. And we're looking for different biometric modalities which are deterministic. So if you happen to find any, or you happen to think about some interesting approaches in this sphere, then please do contact us. We will not leave this unpriced. Thanks. Shannon.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's, in a search for various biometric modalities, right? I know, nothing is set in stone here, but when we're talking about multiple modalities, what do you think are the various modalities that are most likely to be accepted as modalities used for Humanode?
Well, we're really keen on working with the iris because it's very distinct and very precise at the same time. Not many people know this, and I don't want to sound like a racist, but by utilizing liveness detection protocols and search and matching operations on Asian races, for example, the false acceptance rate is much higher. Yeah, and it's the difference between people, which is really important. And even when we work with the faces, we don't really work with the faces, but we work with the shape of the face. And for example, people of the Asian race are much more alike globally than people of all other races. That's why the false acceptance rate is higher. But the iris, for example, it's really distinct. It's different for each person, really, but it just doesn't have as much frameworks, and it's not really supported by devices at the moment. But yeah, it would be a very good and distinctive external modality to utilize to prove that you are you, and that you exist.
Another one in that sense that actually goes beyond the barrier of race, at least so far, is veins. Veins in your hands, veins in your fingers. Although, as you mentioned, it has to use infrared, and therefore it tends to be a little more costly as far as devices go, and they're not lying all around. it's, from what I understand, it seems to be highly accurate. And of course, there are other modalities out there that are extremely accurate too, but are too, I guess, available, like your ear shape. But no, other than the iris, are there any others that you would see that could be utilized?
Brain-computer interfaces is my answer. And actually, there's like many different ways of, and many different brain-computer interfaces to be utilized. Ones that are dependent on the motor cortex, the other ones that are engaged with your emotional side or your logical side. There's so many possibilities, and it's really hard and futuristic and even sci-fi to tell you about it right now. But in simple terms, I'm envisioning like a verification layer based on human beings, right? Where like our thoughts and emotions are directly our keys from the system, like a neurosignature, we call it, like a very unique, distinctive thought that only you can come up with. It can be a mix of stuff that you're envisioning, like seeing, feeling, and it connects you to like the verification layer of the whole everything that is laid down upon it. Like that's how I see it. But I mean, I don't know whether it takes 5 or 10 years to build it. Really.
And then just I don't know. I think listening to you there, I was just thinking, okay, something that you can think of uniquely, a thought. And if it was based on a thought, I could see about half the people having the same signature saying, I hate banks.
Mm.
Or I love puppies.
I mean, if I think about puppies in the same way you do, it's going to be a completely different signature.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have hit the 1 hour mark, so I'd like to open the floor up to everybody. And first off, thank you all for joining us for, I think this is our third or fourth Fireside. And as usual, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time for another Fireside. But for now, the floor is open to everybody and can chat about anything. Humanode or non-humanode, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming, and hope to see you guys around in 2 weeks. Shannon, thank you very much. Victor,
Thank you, Dodo. Thank you, Victor.
Yeah, thanks, guys, especially to those who come here for the second or third week in a row. Thank you for support.